I want to show you what I've been working on. This is a big tetrahedron. I made it quite big so I could show what it is full of. Of course, this in purple in the middle that you see right here, that's kind of, it's a hexagon shape all around, if you see it there. Well, that is part of the tetrahedron that is the vector equilibrium. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Part of it is the vector equilibrium, which is inside of an octahedron. And the octahedron is inside of the tetrahedron. And the vector equilibrium is said to be the closest packing of spheres. And it's supposed to represent the body, the mathematical body built around the God spot, the invisible spot where God resides. And I want to show that in this part that I've got all this, well, it's woven wire. And there's all these little triangles. I don't know if you can see them. I'm trying to make it where you can. Well, I'll just show you the face one. But they go through all the planes, this same face pattern on the outside here, which is the flower of life pattern, which is a lot of little triangles. If you don't curve it and give it the petal look, and you give it the male look of the straight lines, it is the intersecting circles or intersecting hexagons. And the vesica Pisces, see there's one right there. The entire thing is just one vesica Pisces after another. But this can go again and again smaller until you have it so filled that it would be solid with this. Solid vector equilibriums. Because everywhere, at every point where points come together, where vectors come together, like at the top here, that is the center of a vector equilibrium. That's the center of one. That's the center of one. And you can see them all inside, all the little points where they come together. That is a vector equilibrium. And those that are surrounded by 12 of them. One in the center with 12 around it. And see, this is the larger vector equilibrium that is in the purple. And it causes this interweaving to be a series of little triangles. And at one point, you can turn this. Let's see if I can capture this with a camera. And you can see through each one. You can see that it's like a little tunnel shaped like a triangle. And at the view that shows the squares, which you have to turn it on its side, and then you see square, 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 but also in the next row there's a series of squares. And of course in the big one it's real obvious because it's a big square right here. So at one angle, several angles actually, it's squares. They get smaller and smaller according to how tightly you want to weave it. Because I could come through each and every one of these again and put another line here, 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 and then cross it that way and then cross it this way. I would have the same pattern with the same little triangles, only tighter. And it's just more than I can do with wire because I can't work that tiny. But you can imagine now, if you will, that it could get so tiny and so filled up that it would be solid. And it would look solid long before you could see the tininess of it, because tiny can get so tiny that our eyes can't visualize it anymore. But even in things that look solid, there is air and there is space. But now here's the remarkable thing, because I always tie this into the fact that we are God. And God is this shape, this vector equilibrium. And we are all around God at these 12 spots. And then up here all these little ones that are it's solid vector equilibrium, no matter how you look at it, and the number of them can't be determined because it could go into infinity. Because each of these triangles around the vector equilibrium, they would make this again. And each of the triangles, if you made one inside, is because inside here is another octahedron, which you could continue inside that, making even more. The vector equilibriums stack up side by side and up and down and interwoven in between, because the vectors of the vector equilibrium constitute the body of another octahedron in which another vector equilibrium can be built. So it is just, any way you go, it's just vector equilibrium by the score, until you could just fill the whole thing up solidly with them. If you could weave that tiny, which I can't. I don't know anybody that can. But what I was noticing in something I'm reading is something to do with little triangles woven. Now, I'm going to take you over here to my computer. And this I am reading, it's from a book called The Return of the Dove. And Margaret Storm wrote this. And she's talking about our etheric body. I'm going to read this part to you. The etheric body contains all records, all memories of past lives, back to the very beginning of our individualization as white fire beings. The etheric body is what modern scientists call the subconscious, which is perhaps as good a name as any other, providing its meaning is clearly understood. At the present time, the term is used glibly and in a meaningless manner. That situation will have to be changed, because a person with a clogged etheric body can make little evolutionary progress. He must understand clearly that the etheric records of bad habits must be transmuted so that the tiny etheric filaments are clean and firmly woven in a perfect pattern of triangles. Whenever the etheric body registers disease or disharmony of any kind, the tiny filaments become disarranged and tattered. These records of disharmony remain until transmuted. Meanwhile, they are built in, embodiment after embodiment. So she's talking about these little etheric filaments. And I'm seeing the body as this sacred geometry, this vector equilibrium that is full of these little tiny and tinier little lined up patterns of triangles. Of course, in this also, another way of viewing it, you will see they're lined up little squares as well as triangles. And they have to be cleaned, because these are the records of all our memories. And let me go back up here and read to you what she says about this. What is this true human freedom which we are seeking? Freedom for man comes to him as a result of his using God-free energy in its natural, free way. God energy, in its pure form, flows into man heartbeat by heartbeat. As the pure electrons are released by the sacred threefold flame within the heart, they enter the bloodstream. As they enter, they are immediately qualified or stamped with the pattern of the individual. They can be qualified with love, or they can be misqualified with hate. And just to interject here, if they're qualified with love, they're going to make the perfect little triangles. In other words, the electrons, which provide all power, can be used to carry out loving deeds, to think loving thoughts, to speak loving words, or they can be used in an opposite manner, depending on the choice we make through the use of our free will. When man misuses this electronic power in performing hateful acts, he misqualifies the energy. In other words, he leaves his stamp of imperfection upon millions of electrons that flow into his bloodstream. This energy is God energy, and as such, it must obey the free will of man. For man is God created as a free being. When man chooses to enslave this free and pure energy so that it will do his bidding and supply him with power to carry out some questionable enterprise, he thereby enslaves himself. He starts each pure electron on its way through his own bloodstream with a handicap, the weight of his own feeling of discord. The electron itself remains pure, for it is God energy and can know no impurity. But as it whirls on its course, it collects around itself a shell of impure matter, the same murky gray astral matter that the laggards brought to earth. I'll interject here. She talks about the laggards as coming to our earth when it was quite young, and they were rejects from other planets that had failed to pass their evolutionary test to evolve on their own planets. So it was thought that Earth people could help them. But as it turned out, the laggards caused the Earth and the people that were able to use the God flames and rays to bring about anything they needed. It caused them to, these laggards caused them to all change because they brought in thought emanations that did all this damage. Okay, back to where it says, the same murky gray astral matter that the laggards brought to Earth, as it takes its appointed place with other electrons and forms an atom, this sticky substance clings, and soon the revolution of the electrons within the atom is slowed by the clogging. Then the revolution of the atom itself is slowed. And in addition, the atom collects the same astral substance on its outer shell, adding further weight. The resulting rate of electronic revolutions plus atomic revolutions, taken as a whole in a man's physical, etheric, emotional, and mental bodies, constitute what is known as his state of consciousness or his vibratory note. If his electrons and atoms are revolving slowly, he is not only subject to disease, but he is subject to ugly delusions, such as death. He begins to feel old age creeping on, and in his limited understanding, he assumes that death is not far away. He feels fearful, bereaved, and alone. He cannot understand who he is or why he is here. He has no purpose in accord with the divine plan. He is, in short, a materialist weighed down by his own burdens of hate, which he carries right within his own atoms. He tends to be separative in relation to his God and his fellow man, because he is usually quite charmed by the amount of astral debris he has accumulated in his atomic structure. The weight of the misqualified energy he is using places him under the delusion that the rioting force within gives him power. He throws his weight around, as the popular saying goes. He likes to give orders, put people in their place, clamp down on this situation or that, and in general act like a big shot. If he happens to be a scientist seeking to ferret out the secrets of atomic power, he can only react according to the limitations he has imposed upon his own atomic structure. He therefore seeks to enslave the atom, just as he has enslaved his own atoms that he lives with each day. He can think of atomic power only in terms of fission and fusion. He wants to split the atom, to tear it apart by brute force, to strip it bare as one would strip the skin off an orange. His way is the way of hate, of fear, of snickering smugness. The individual who is not separated from his source by this barrier of astral debris within his four lower bodies works with the rays and the flames. He forms a close friendship with the seven great Elohim who built this planet, and with the seven mighty archangels and their angelic host, who guard the planet and aid all persons who ask for angelic assistance. He reasons that if the Elohim constructed the planet, then he must come to an understanding with these mighty builders. He must try to learn their techniques. He must try to follow their way. Their way is the way of love. Therefore, his way must be the way of love. If he observes the work of the fission-fusion scientist, He understands that they have brought all humanity to the verge of disaster with their way of hate, of fear, of black magic. He understands that while this planet was yet a paradise before the laggards came, the light within the atom was released in beauty, in peace, and in all the mighty strength of the One. He knows that this way of truth must once more shine upon the minds of all men everywhere before man can release himself into freedom, before he can ascend to his home star. He knows that man can accomplish nothing in his bereaved state of loneliness because he feels so far from his Creator. He knows that every individual must someday accept the gift of God, the violet fire of transmutation. He knows that someday, sometime, someplace, each individual must visualize that flame sweeping through and through each atom of in his 4 lower bodies, transmuting all electronic energy which he himself has misqualified down through countless ages of embodiments. Individual by individual, until 10 billion souls have been counted, this transmuting process must go on atom by atom, electron by electron, until all humans on this planet emerge into freedom's light, and the planet itself enters its new orbit as Freedom's Star, for that is the name written in the Book of Life for planet Earth, and this is the program for the Aquarian Age. So, I'm going to read you more about the sun, and it will be in the next series, but this I wanted to share with you. I'll share you one more thing. This right here, let me set it over here. This. I don't know if that shows up so good. Maybe I set it by the door. This is the vector equilibrium. Only what I did was I squeezed all the sides in, and I made it into the chalice, the cup. Because we are this shape, and yet we are in sometimes a stressful situation, and all are the middle of this vector equilibrium, all 4 of them, of the sides of it, come together. Well, it turns out that this makes the chalice, what I call the chalice, or the cup, which has a hole right down the center, because it's not meant to hold anything. It's meant for something to pass through it. And we are this vessel, this cup, and God is what passes through us, this creative power that we call God. And it moves through us, and we can't contain it. We can only allow it to move through us, and that's why the cup has a hole in the bottom on both sides. Sometimes I kind of think of this too as a part of the vortexing of energy that goes in one side clockwise and in the other side counterclockwise. But anyway, this is something I just came up with on my own. Don't know what it means. If it means what I think it does, I don't know. But it just looked like a cup to me, and a chalice. So that's what I call it. And also you can turn the sides down until this side meets this side. I've shown that in other videos. And then it looks like the torus. Looks like a big donut. Anyway, this is all I have for now. This is the Dove Lady, over and out.